Hey guys, I love having a full crowd. Um, Recurring theme in this presentation will be that I'm a kind of a deadbeat who got like a real person job somehow. So it only makes sense that I wouldn't be on the program because I took too long to get ready for this. So my question for aspiring journalists is, are you ready for a serious relationship? Because of, well, as I'm going to talk about, being a journalist is being in a relationship. Yeah, it's actually lots of relationships, but especially with your audience. And what I realized in radio is it's very easy to forget that that relationship even exists when you're just sitting in a cubicle churning out content. So this is a tale of not knowing what I was getting myself into. These are our friends Hillary Clinton and LA Mayor Garcetti, keeping me company on the night shift. So I wanted to start with just a review of how I got to where I am. And I'll start by saying, Jessica, I saw in the program your class of 2014, like you finished in 2014. Well, that was supposed to be me too. I started in 2010, and here I am, finally finishing. So I'm going to start with a story time just to tell you how I got to where I am today, to why I'm talking about this. So my job at KFI, which is the top news talk station in Los Angeles, it started with an internship. But I didn't even deserve another internship because here's the internship that I had before KFI. This is at the end of the spring semester in 2015. And I get a note from my internship supervisor at the OC Breeze, which is a tiny little news blog. And she says, hey, just wondering when you're going to get those last articles. And I was like, oh, darn it, I thought I kind of like skipped out of that. I never replied. So this is just to say that I have a long trail of flakeouts in my past. My second chance also began, though, with an email. I'm not going to read this to you, but if you'll notice that I'm emailing the internship supervisor at KFI, AM 640, 1 week before the semester starts, hoping for an internship. And she somehow incredibly graciously said, I don't have a position available for this semester, but I'd be happy to consider you for the summer. 2 months later, she actually got back to me. And I went in, did an interview, and they liked me, chose me within about 10 minutes. I was hired for an internship, and it was awesome. So here I am in KFI learning how the board op stuff works. And when I first walked in there, I felt like, wow, I can't believe I'm behind the scenes. And like once you work there, you're just like, it's just whatever, right? One of the best moments was when they actually hired me after my internship as a part-time producer, and I was able to quit Chick-fil-A. I think that's a cookies and cream milkshake that they made for me, and it was a great way to just be like, booyah, I'm out of here. And there's me like, hey, I'm working. This is not an internship anymore. And this was a nice little note that I got from my internship supervisor saying, good luck, Trevor, you can do it, because I was filling in for him, and I actually produced a show. And that was when I realized, oh my gosh, this is real. This is a real morning drive radio personality, and I'm putting a show together for him. And this is just one of those moments where, just like in my internship, I realized, oh gosh, like, this is real. I have to like step up. This isn't school anymore, because unfortunately I don't take school as serious as some people do. I realized this is real life. I gotta take this really seriously. And that's what I've done ever since. I made some friends at my work, and like Nikki, my coworker in the mornings, who brought me back an ABBA magnetic bookmark from her trip to Sweden. Just a reminder that the first relationship you build in the newsroom is within your friends that you work with. I gave them succulents for Christmas, kept one for myself, which is almost dead by now, and I've heard some similar stories as well. But I just wanted that to be an encouragement to people who find jobs in the real world, that it's not this like big bad the world where you should be like scared of everyone that you're working with. There's lots of really nice people at KFI. And this is the view from my office. These are both morning shots because I work overnight, and this is what I get to see when the sun finally comes up and like there's other people around me. Whereas for the first 3 or 4 hours, I'm almost all by myself. So let me get to the crux of the story, which is, are you ready for a long-term relationship with serious baggage? Because the job of being a journalist is a relational job. You have to be ready to have a responsibility to your audience. And sometimes it's really easy to forget that they're even out there, spread out across Southern California. Sometimes the words that I'm writing are going out to hundreds of thousands or even 1 million people. And it doesn't even hit me sometimes. And the serious baggage part is that sometimes it's hard being a journalist. Lots of people don't like journalists. You get nasty calls in the newsroom about people being mad at you for writing this or saying that, or, anyway, this was me the first day off that I took with my new job at KFI, and I just said, spending my short vacation realizing I need a long vacation because it was kind of exhausting. So, what is this baggage for the serious relationship that you're getting into when you become a journalist? Well, it's because your chosen career makes people suspicious a lot of the time. And when I was in a narrative journalism class, we read some words by Catherine Boo, who's an amazing Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. She said, as a journalist, I have more power than the people who appear in my stories. There's no way around that. Though it is disingenuous to suggest that there is some way to make it an equal relationship, it can be a respectful one. And you have to remember that your audience is who you're directing your work towards, and they're also the ones who are the quality control. You're going to get feedback from them, and you need to know, are you serving their needs as a journalist? Catherine Boo, in the same piece, which is called Truth and Consequences, in the book Telling True Stories, she says, you will make 1,000 moral decisions in the course of reporting and writing each story. And later on I'll get to the thousands of moral decisions that I feel like I make every morning when I'm writing the morning news that goes out to hundreds of thousands of people. So that's the first reason why there's like this suspicion, this baggage, is because you have so much power. Of course people are going to wonder whether you're serving their best interests. And then I was listening to this the other day, and I just thought it was perfect. Jon Stewart, formerly of The Daily Show, he's apparently a really astute media critic. And he said that sometimes the news media is kind of like a crack dealer, saying, as long as people are buying crack, everything's good on his block. And he's talking about cable news. So listen to this. This was about 6 months before the election. Oh, wait. Switch over.
Television journalism was ahead of the game at the Nixon-Kennedy debate. That's when the television medium...
That was a while ago.
Came into... Right, I was there, you were there.
Yeah, we were pages.
Came into effect. Basically, Kennedy understood it a little bit rudimentarily. He thought, I should probably wear makeup. And Nixon was like, I look great. So he went out there and, everybody thought he had hepatitis, and that was the end of his career. Since then, an entire industry has risen up as to how to manipulate and skew that medium to the advantage of the politicians and the powerful. And the industry, rather than in some ways creating a counterweight to that, have been subsumed by it. And so now it's a symbiosis. The media is no longer predator and prey, which I think should be the relationship, but a remora that's just attached underneath, hoping for crumbs.
So I'll stop it there. I thought that was really interesting. And the reason why we chase after the proverbial sharks in our culture, trying to get them to do something interesting and catch it on camera, is that that's what sells news. So is that us? I have to think about myself sometimes sifting through. I'll just kind of skip ahead to my job. I get in the morning and I have to fill the file with the news that's important. Kind of like the New York Times would say, what's fit to print? Because I come in and I look through the wires, I get AP copy, dozens, hundreds of stories that I'm sifting through, and I write maybe 24. The things that kind of rise to the surface, what's the daily news that needs to be told when people wake up at 5 in the morning and get in their cars and listen to the newscast. And you have to wonder, am I just going after the biggest, baddest, most obnoxious characters out there just because they look good on TV or they said something crazy that sounds awesome on the radio? And definitely the last election had a lot of media people soul searching, wondering if they were just parasitically feeding off of, obnoxious characters, while also feeling like those obnoxious characters were kind of sucking the life out of them and just expecting us to publish anything that's crazy enough. So I had some quotes from this book that I read in a Tamara Welter class, but I don't really have time to go over them. But it's basically just this idea that people are, in the British papers, they call themselves news hacks. They just sit in a little cubicle and they're like, oh, got to churn out more content, churn out more content. The negative news sells, so put that in the headline. It doesn't have to be the whole story. Just pick on the story that's the most sensational and broadcast it out there. And then, so in terms of this relationship, do people really even think that we're doing a good job? You can just see a decline. And this is broken down by party lines also. But right now, if you're a Republican, you really don't like most media sources. And so as BuzzFeed would say, we have failed. And there's just, the stats out there are crazy. But what I did see, though, is people do still think that the media is doing a decent job. They think news organizations help keep political leaders from doing things that shouldn't be done. About 3/4 of people think that's still true. So we're still viewed as the watchdogs. And we need to remember that we are in a relationship with our audience that expects something very specific from us. They expect a service out of us. So, sorry world, you still need us. Fishy says he doesn't need water, is only fooling his sorry, scaly self. So, sorry audiences, you still need journalists. So we have all these people freaking out about fake news and stuff. But the truth is, people are still looking for news sources. The whole fake news phenomenon happened because people were still looking for sources of information. So we need to fill that role for them. And I'm just going to keep skipping through here. Organizations are starting to realize, oh my gosh, we matter. After the election, Washington Post and New York Times started doing these truth campaigns about we matter. And it's kind of sad that I think that audiences know that already. I think it's almost like news organizations reminding themselves, sadly, that they still matter. So let me just finish with my personal experience, which is I come in, like I say, I scan through all these stories, and I have to decide, what do I write about? And honestly, it's kind of, for a perfectionist like me who doubts himself a lot, there's so many opportunities for self-doubt as a journalist, wondering, am I letting my audiences down? And sometimes I wonder if we forget about the audience just because we don't want to acknowledge the huge responsibility that we serve. And it's just more easy to think of ourselves as just pushing out the content and not thinking about, what if I'm doing this wrong? When I'm writing a story, I just have 3 things that I want to say. There are, at every step of the process, there are very significant moral choices. The first one, what I will or won't write. I remember coming in and being told, I know this sounds terrible, but if it's a shooting in South Central LA, it's not really news to our listeners. If it's a shooting in Beverly Hills, it is. And even though I understand where that's coming from, you do feel kind of bad about that when you see how much crime is out there that you just don't have time to cover, that your audiences just don't have time to pay attention to. Another moral choice, how much am I researching my story? Because my story, it's for the radio, it's a little blurb that takes about 15 seconds to read, and I'm starting out with a 2-page AP article. How far down do I read? How many paragraphs down? Do I just skim across the surface, or do I try to look deeper? The last step that I think is a moral choice is, how do I write the story? Do I lead with the bleeding? Do I lead with whatever's sexy? And what do I leave out? And I think it's really important to realize that you're never going to be able to know sometimes what's the right way to do it, because the world is so complicated. And in radio especially, I'm boiling down a 60-minute speech by the president into a 30-second story with like a 10-second soundbite. And I just realized there are so many choices to make. And when I get untethered and I feel like it just doesn't matter, like I have 15 clips available to me of the president, I'll just throw one in. I have to remember that I'm in a relationship with this audience. It's a relationship with lots of baggage because people are worried that we're not doing our job well enough. People are worried that we're going to leave something out, that we don't really want them to know the true story about the president. Maybe we're biased. And so I have to take it very seriously. I have to remember that I'm in a relationship with this audience, and I need to try to do my very best to get to the core. And so I'm not saying that I know how to do it right. I'm just saying that I have to remember that, or else the job just kind of feels meaningless. And you'll get stuck in the ratings, and which I do get emails about the ratings. You'll get stuck in the trending stories, and I do get emails about the trending stories. And sometimes it doesn't help the ratings, and it's not good for the trending file, but I really need to write about the civil war in Syria because I can't stomach not doing it. And sometimes that's where I just have to say, you know what, I'm in a relationship with my audience. I need to tell them what I think they need to hear. And I need to do this job as if I'm working for Christ with a real conviction that it matters. So that's just what I wanted to say today. And yeah, that was there when I got there. And I never took it down from my cubicles because I just thought it was perfect. Yeah. I am done. Thank you.